It's been a little bit since Festive has come out, and I have some updated feelings, experiences, and conclusions that I've come to regarding the character. So without further ado, let's get into it. As you see right now, this is the build that I ended up trying with Festive. She's kind of quick, and the build that you're seeing right here might remind you of someone like Solitaria or Angel of Light, and that's because, truth be told, that's kind of how I've been using the character. Now, admittedly, I do think that Festive, upon release, to me felt like a character that was maybe supposed to be more like Solitaria as opposed to a utility debuffer in the way that I would consider other characters like Famir. But I actually feel that now that the dust has settled, she feels more like a hybrid of Famir and Angel of Light in the scenarios that I've been using her in, of course. Now, there are a couple different ways that I've also been seeing Festive been used, and that's including her on an artifact like Guide to a Decision, and I specifically have a match in my history, actually, that I'll get into later, where I got cheesed because I had to AoE, and then she guided decisions up, and she punished me for having Ludwig on my team, and cut me anyways. That being said, of course, not every single build is going to be viable, and I think Ida ultimately, similar to characters like Famir or Angel of Light, is going to be one of these characters where you have to specifically tune or build your character a specific way for one specific goal or playstyle. If you guys are familiar with someone like Sage Ball, this is something that regularly occurs every single season, where sometimes full tank Sage Ball is really strong and sometimes full effect resistance Sage Ball is really strong. The actual build and the reason why the character can be strong in some cases is simply because you don't know what build you're going to be fighting against when it comes to Ida. And although Ida is definitely not as impactful as a character as, or is as impactful of a character as someone like Angel of Light or Sage Ball, I do think that part of her excellence and part of her strength will come from not being exactly sure what kind of build or what kind of stats you're going to have on the character. Now, running back through her kit, I will say that by all means, the Angel of Light-esque S3 having the silence and the unbuffable is always really nice, but I actually found that the pushback from Ida's S2 passive is actually way more impactful than I had ever imagined it to be. Now, of course, pushing back is nowhere near as important as the defense break, which is kind of the main thing that I noticed a lot of people end up using Ida for, and I personally was also using Ida for. But this has kind of come down to or I guess has kind of led to one of the main concerns with Ida, which is, unlike a character like Famir, or unlike a character maybe like, I don't know, Briarwitch Iseria, there isn't a real easy way to guarantee, or the character doesn't feel super stable or consistent. Now, Famir by no means has doesn't have an ignore effect resistance defense break. However, the main thing with regarding Famir, I should say, is that she has a lot of effectiveness, or she can focus primarily on effectiveness, and you don't really need things like HP defense, since most of the time you're going to be cleaving with Famir. However, unfortunately with Ida, she kind of has this weird, I guess, mid-range issue where sometimes you want to be effectiveness, sometimes you want to have her be on ER, but in order for her to even activate her shyness passive, she has to get hit, so she needs to survive a little bit, but you also don't want to be unbuffable, because it's not like Famir where you just do S2 no matter what. Like, there are things that you have to kind of take into consideration with Ida, and setting her up is kind of similar in feeling to Famir, but typically for Famir, it's okay, I can dictate these, like the team, or I can dictate what team composition I'm running. I can run Knockwall and Laya, and then I've got my RGBs, and then I can suddenly now activate my Famir button. However, with Ida, there are a bit more restrictions, and again, simply because, number one, we don't have RTA to test her full capability, but number two, because in the, like, I guess basically in the cases that we can test her right now, no one is running, I guess, team compositions that would really be punished by Ida. Now, if you're running her full effectiveness, I could definitely see the value in this. But however, if you want to avoid yourself from getting silenced, or if you want to prevent yourself from getting provoked, you do need a little bit of effect resistance. Although, that being said, if you are someone that is going to be cleaving and you're just accepting your team getting hit by a, by a Navy Captain Landy S2 or an Abyssal Euphine AoE, by all means, Ida, of course, can do the defense break. It just feels like there are so many things to take into consideration, and part of that will obviously make her really strong if you can master the ability to play her like this, but in terms of effort, there are likely way more characters that have fewer cons to them. Death Dealer Ray and Knockwall, of course, come to mind. And although those characters are definitely the premium, premium debuffers in the game right now, that's really what you have to compare a character like Festive Ida to, especially since she's limited and most characters are, or most players, I should say, are pulling for this character anyways. Now, in terms of that, or with all that being said, I do think that she still does have decent value, especially if you're someone that's early on or has not really played too much epicseven and you're missing some of the other limiteds or ML5s. I think that she does do fine, even just as an RGB character if you're trying to use her as a defense breaker. But that does lead me to honestly rating her in like the mid-range-ish, maybe to the 6 to 7 out of 10 kind of value. And again, I do understand that building a character that's fast is already difficult, and I don't necessarily think that Ida needs to be very fast. But I do think that it helps, especially because you want to make sure that a character like Ida goes ahead of characters like Ludwig. You want to make sure she goes ahead of characters like Jacko. And sometimes those characters can be anywhere between 220 to 250 to 260, sometimes even on Ludwig. So it feels a little bit weird if Ida isn't faster, which is why, again, a lot of her stat distribution and things like this just end up feeling kind of weird. Now, again, in terms of her value, you do have access to, again, her being on things like Guiding Light or her being on Book, which I think is also cool. But none of these, I think, nearly, I guess I wouldn't necessarily say that her being a book holder in this day and age where there are 1,000 book holders necessarily grant her incomparable or invaluable value, for lack of a better word. But ultimately, because of that, I think she's pretty mid. Now, I know this is supposed to be an Ida review, and again, I don't know if or what people have been commenting about when it comes to the entirety of the summer event, but although I do think that Ida's design is spectacular, let's not be dishonest here. I do want to mention that while I was doing all the summer activities, and although we haven't gotten Frida yet, who I'll also make an updated review about, this whole event regarding like the rhythm system and all this sounds really nice in theory, and sounded, I should say, really nice in theory on paper, and I was, for me personally, very excited to try it. But a lot of the summer events and a lot of the rhythm tracks feel a little bit desynced, especially if you're playing on mobile. I actually specifically had to re-download LD Player on my PC so that I could get a lot of these achievements to begin with. And another thing that feels really annoying is that the argument, or what I've been suggested to do in order to complete this activity or to perform better and get all the rewards here, is to unironically just full palm my phone and just spam every single button 4 times with my, like, with basically 4 fingers, basically, to get as many note hits as possible while spamming as quickly as possible. But the issue here is that, number one, if that's what you're doing to make an enjoyable event, it's no longer enjoyable. But number two, no one really wants to be doing an activity as a chore. And in my opinion, it kind of does sour things as an event in general, especially when, for the most part, I'd say the promotion for the summer event, I think the characters in the summer event look pretty cool. This is a pretty, it's a pretty nice background. I do like Ida. I like her voice lines. I like a lot of her design. And of course, Mercedes and all the other characters are pretty cool. And that's not even talking about the illustration, of course, which I think is really exceptional as well. That was just a side note, but overall, guys, I think that Ida is pretty cool. Sorry for a bit of a rant. I guess I could also show you that little, or that small clip of me getting absolutely smacked by the Ida. I got instantly destroyed. And as you can see, if you guys weren't aware, I've been playing a little bit of RTA just to make sure I don't decay and stuff, and whenever I'm curious about stats. But as you can see here, I was not really aware of the fact that there was a guide to decision here, but the Ida here ended up cutting my Ludwig. And even though I probably would have cut I would have cut the Infinite Horizon Acades here, the Ida just ended up punishing me super hard. And then she got to proc her S2 when I instantly died. So that's another way that you could play Ida. Again, personally, I thought she would be really cool for cleave, but even as a cleaver, I got anti-cleaved by her, which I think does put some value in her, or does add some value to her, and I think that was pretty cool. But That was just a small example. I think maybe she'll have a little bit more value in Arena if you're okay with not having ignore effect resistance characters like that. But personally, I found that a lot of characters or a lot of players tend to lean against characters like Ran, Knockwall, Briarwitch Iseria, the non-avoidable ignore effect resistance characters that have defense breaks to do their bidding or to reset teams, seal them, whatever. But unfortunately, is not quite on that same caliber. And ultimately, though, even though I've given this review to her, she's a limited, so good chance you're gonna have to pull for her. Anyways, though, guys, again, that's gonna be it for this video. Thanks again for watching. I'll have a bit of an updated review, I guess, for Ilinov, who I think is also pretty cool. And I was definitely wrong about her initially. I kind of didn't understand how the calculation of pen and stuff was going on, and I apologize for that, but I'll give more of my thoughts on Ilinov later. Thanks again for watching, though. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I'll see you all next time. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.